Good morning and welcome everybody to our Equity in Action Praxis sessions every Tuesday at 10. We are really excited today to have Kiara Koning and Katie Osau. I should have asked you, Katie. Did I do okay?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Of Yuba College, who are going to share their experience jumping off from the 3CSN Equity 101 online course into doing some real work on their campus. So just as a reminder, and for folks who have not been to one of these sessions before, our praxis sessions are an opportunity for us to highlight the work of practitioners in the field. It's wonderful for us to hear from experts, and we really appreciate that. The big names, the big famous people, we love them and we honor them and we appreciate when we have the opportunity to hear them speak. But at the same time, sometimes we need to hear from each other from wherever it is that we stand or sit, whatever our role is on campus, how are we going about the work of equity on campus? And so the way this session is going to run is we'll do a real quick overview of the community agreements, and those are in the chat in the link. Just so that we are all on the same page. We really believe in being transparent about the rules of engagement, so that everybody has kind of like a reason to feel safe engaging and sharing. And then we will hear from our presenters. It'll be about 20 minutes, and then there'll be a chance to talk in small groups and a chance to talk as a whole group and sort of collect some thoughts as a community. So with that said, I just want to take 1 minute for you to look at those community agreements that are linked in the chat and that which are shown on the screen. Thank you, Kiara. Just take a minute to read these over. If there's anything you want to question or anything you want to emphasize, I invite you to do so in the chat. But otherwise, we can just review. As you're finishing up taking a look at these, I just wanted to offer a thought. One of the things that struck me this time reading them over was that one in the middle, which is the simplest statement, which is be kind. And this is something I just wanted to draw our attention to because I was really struck last week by what I felt in my body when I got a message from a colleague saying they're going to announce the Chauvin verdict in about 30 minutes. And I was just, my heart started racing. I went cold, I went hot. And so even though it was the right verdict, the right decision, I just wanted to acknowledge that that actually is still painful and opens up space to acknowledge all the wrong verdicts. And I just wanted to just mention that, I felt like I and everybody I knew was really tired last week, and it was like kind of like a really rough week. So I feel like we just need to, and I'm not saying this is everyone's experience. I'm just saying that I'm sure that for a lot of people, it was a complex and exhausting week emotionally. And it seems like it's always like that. But what we can do is be kind. We don't know, good news, bad news. We don't know how that's sitting. We don't know the impact that that's having, but at least we can assume best intentions and be kind. So with that, I want to hand it over to our presenters. I don't want to take any more time. As always, you are welcome to add thoughts in the chat. Thank you, Katie and Kiara. Please take it away.
No, thank you, Nika. I think that's a really important place to start from, especially this week. So I'm Kiara, and we apologize for all the Ks. I'll just say this, and I'm not to be confused with Keelan, who is also on this call, because we really like to make things confusing. So yeah, you can introduce yourself, Katie.
Okay. Hi, I'm Katie, and Kiara and I both teach English at Yuba College. And so we are going to start this morning with a couple of reflection questions for you. And we're going to do this throughout our presentation, give you an opportunity to reflect and sort of think through some ideas, and then we will share our perspectives on those same questions. And our goal today, we want to share with you what we were able to take from the 3CSN Equity 101. and how we were able to implement some of the things that we learned and did on our campus. And so, and what we want to do is while we share, we want to empower you to think through, well, maybe what sort of similar moves or what does your campus need that you could then go and, take from, some ideas that we have. How could you take that work and see it happening on your own campus? So that's what some of those reflection questions are meant to do. So we're going to start off and, feel free to reflect however you want, take notes. But the questions are, how is equity work going on your campus? So if you had to rate it, how would it score? And what group or groups do you think would benefit from taking a deep dive into equity learning on your campus? So for example, is there a particular faculty group, a particular staff group, or maybe just everybody, even though that's kind of a big one to start with, but maybe that's what you need. And so we're going to give you about 3 minutes to reflect, and then I'm going to share kind of how we got started with our work answering some of those same questions. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to kind of think through how things are going and who you think might benefit from equity learning on your campus. And so I want to start by sharing a little bit about what Kiara and I put together for Yuba College. So as I mentioned, we took the 3CSN Equity 101 course last summer. And we recognized that there was a need for these equity conversations on our campus. And since Kiara and I are both in the English department, that is kind of where we started with bringing this work or bringing this type of, activities onto our campus. Is we started with the English department. And for us, it made sense since we have been colleagues for a while. We know that we get along, right? We know that we have similar core values when it comes to this work and bringing this work to campus. Kiara is part of the lead department, a lead committee on campus. So she's already kind of got her foot in the door when it comes to talking about these issues. So we decided last fall that we would start with a English department teaching community where we would bring in some of our English colleagues into this work. And so we were able to put on, and Kiara's going to talk more about like the structure, right, and the logistics of what we put on. But we decided, okay, English department is a good place to start, not only because we are already familiar, the two of us as facilitators, but also these conversations were already happening in the department. It just wasn't as structured, I guess is the word I'm thinking through. These conversations were happening sort of in, offices and department meetings. And we thought, well, this would be an opportunity because people are already interested, or at least people already understand the importance of these conversations. So we said, okay, well, what can we design to get our colleagues into this discussion with us in a more meaningful way? And so what we were able to do is put together a teaching community, and we already had some of the structure of a teaching community in place on campus. And Kiara, again, is going to talk a little bit more about the logistics of it. So if you're thinking about, bringing some sort of equity work to your campus, finding a place that makes sense to start, where depending on your role on campus, I think is a good way to get the ball rolling and get that moving through. So what we decided to do is we said, okay, well, we know that these conversations are happening in our English department, but we need to know a little bit more about what people's interest level are. I mean, even things like their ability to commit to the amount of time that they can spend on this work. Is there going to be compensation involved? Things like that. But what we decided to do is to think a little bit about our audience and kind of work through who they are, where they are on their equity journey, and how can we as facilitators meet them where they're at. And so we did a pre-semester department meeting. Our department at the beginning of every semester has a meeting where they talk about, here are some of the announcements for the semester. And we were actually fortunate to take some time with that and talk about why equity work matters and what we were thinking about doing, and in sort of a recruitment event in a way, right? Trying to get people involved and trying to gauge interest. And then we also had a survey that kind of gauged people's interest, not only asking them what their availability is, right? Logistics like that, but also where do they see themselves in this equity work? Kiara had this amazing metaphor of a hike, right? So how far along are you on the path? Are you literally just still putting your gear in the backpack, or have you been walking on the path for a minute? Or maybe you're at the halfway point, right? So they were able to kind of think through where they were in terms of their equity work, that we could then take their responses and work with. And so what we were able to do is be community responsive and respond to them based on where they were and then sort of what was happening as we moved through the work that we were doing during the semester. So we met often to revise some of what we were doing. We shifted topics based on what their responses were, what they wanted to focus on, what they needed to focus on. And then you can see there on the slide, we talked about some of our core values. And I think this is really important if you're thinking about bringing equity work onto your campus, is to think about what are those core values that you want to bring through, and then kind of that will help you put together and design your work. Kiara, do you want to show our Padlet for, we could do fall or spring just really quickly?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually get it to. This is always the trick when I have like 14 windows open.
But anyway, so the Padlet that we're going to share, I'm going to just share it really briefly. It is a lot. It has a lot of words on it. So just know that if it seems like a lot, it is. But what it can show you is how we structured our course and what those core values had put together for the actual course itself. And then Kiara can talk a little bit more about like the logistics of how we put everything together. But we made this, Padlet's a really great tool, by the way, if you're not familiar, because it kind of lets you put together in timeline fashion, or there are other templates that you can use as well, that will show a breakdown of any particular thing. So you can see we started with our why. We started with some of those core values, accessibility, intentional design, just in time, the 4 R's that we learned about in Equity 101. And we kind of created a plan. And you can see it kind of goes in a timeline fashion, where we had, what is our core concept? What is it that we're trying to do in terms of making sure that everybody has an accessible and equitable way to access the material? What are we actually going to talk about in some of our different units? And because we're faculty, we think in units, right, for a course. So that's how we decided to put it together. And so you can see we covered things like privilege, cultural literacy, community responsiveness. We had several activities surrounding anti-racism and anti-racist policies, intersectionality and allyship, which is one that we put a little more emphasis on this spring. And we had several readings and videos that we would put together for our participants, and they would kind of go through these different units with us and be in conversation, whether it be in a live meeting or on our Canvas page that we built, to kind of put together some more of these ideas.
All right, so we're going to give you another 3 minutes or so to reflect on these questions. So what are some key equity concepts? You heard Katie mention things like intersectionality, being community responsive. But again, this may also vary depending on what group you're thinking about working with, and or depending on where things are at on your campus. So you may have had some really good conversations on your campus around particular aspects of equity work, but there are others that haven't even started happening, or that need to happen that haven't yet, or are just getting started. So again, what might be some key equity concepts? And then also what logistical support or framework exists that you might be able to add on to or incorporate your work into. Again, Katie mentioned that we have teaching communities at our campus, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And again, if you don't know, who might you be able to ask? So is there a go-to maybe professional development coordinator or committee that you could work with or collaborate with? Is your diversity, equity, and inclusion committee or group that you could work with, maybe guided pathways, because I know there's an emphasis in guided pathways on professional learning. So just thinking through those for about 3 minutes and just make some notes. So we, the next thing that Katie and I thought would be important to share with all of you, if in terms of thinking about how to do this at your own institutions or within your own department or your own service area, if you're counselors, or even I also coordinate our writing center. So I've thought a lot about this in terms of doing Equity 101 for peer tutors or with student workers, peer mentors, et cetera, right? I think this idea of doing deeper learning with equity applies to anybody who's in any kind of teaching and learning position. So in terms of the key elements, we built on a teaching community framework that already existed. And our teaching communities are semester-long communities of practice. We give stipends for part-timers to participate in those. Our stipends are two-tiered, so they get, if they make 60% of the meetings, they get one stipend. If they make all of the meetings, they get another stipend level. The stipends are based on the average hourly pay rate for our part-time faculty on campus. This is something we established when I was part of our basic skills committee, and which has continued. And we currently use student equity and achievement funds, so SEEP funds, to do this. And right now, our teaching communities are overseen by our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, but they will probably become part of our teaching and learning center as we develop that via guided pathways. And I know I just threw a lot of terminology at you, so if that's all overwhelming, that's totally okay. You're welcome to just email Katie or I afterwards, and we can walk you through again some of the steps and different things that we used. Katie and I, again, probably because we're teachers, we use Canvas, our learning management system, to design the courses for our participants. So we, sorry to keep jumping back and forth between things here. So again, we built it we created a sandbox module in Canvas, and we just started building stuff. We add our participants as either TAs or students. And then we do things like, we have a page that introduces them to the unit and has what we're doing when, whether it's a live meeting or some pre-reading and thinking we want them to do. And then that allows us to jump into those discussion forums and participate. So sometimes Katie and I actually genuinely participate with this. And sometimes we actually, and then we can also respond. So we give feedback to the participants, answer questions. Again, it's been, I think this has been really helpful for all of us are very busy with a lot of different things. And so again, having something that people can come back to, that they can revisit, has been really helpful for everybody involved. And I also think we were earlier with the norms, we were talking about, what's shared here maybe needs to stay here, but what you learn should be taken out. And so I think this has a nice balance of it's specific to the participants. So the only people who are part of this Canvas site are the participants. However, they always have that learning to go back to. They can go back to these discussion forums or assignments or draw on the readings that we've done and incorporate those, right? So it can work as a resource for them, but it also creates that sense of a space that is separate from just other conversations that might be had on campus or other, meetings that they're part of or forced to be part of. And so the other thing that I would say is really important, or a key element, you need to make sure that the facilitators have time. I think that has been the biggest, for Katie and I, have been really important. So every Wednesday morning that we are not leading a live meeting, we actually meet during the time that those meetings are scheduled to talk about what people have been posting, questions that have been coming up, other things that we've learned through other activities that we might want to incorporate. That allows us to be more responsive to the participants. It allows us to change. We've actually changed the order of things we were presenting based on some of the inquiries or questions that asked. We're really lucky this time we have a group that's pretty far along in their equity journey. And so we were able to say, wow, we can go faster, right? Like we can speed up the course and we can start tackling more challenging topics with this group because of where they were at. So we completely redid unit 3 and 4 for this group. And again, having the time to do that means that, again, good teaching principle, right? We're actually teaching the students who are in this version of this course with us in a way that we wouldn't be able to if we had built it out in advance and then we were just trying to show up for the meetings. And again, that's I think if you can build that in, it's really important. We also felt like it was really important to have a mix of asynchronous and synchronous sessions. Initially, this was so more part-timers could participate, so that flexibility of scheduling. But we realized really quickly that the live meetings were incredibly valuable for relationship building. It created different kinds of conversations and connections. And so even though they're over Zoom right now, we feel like this really is an element that you have to, if you at all can, try to incorporate, because again, especially in our current version, so we did the department version that Katie mentioned last time. Our current version actually it's a kind of all college. And so we have a full-time counselor, a part-time sociology instructor, one of our instructional associates from our Center for College Success is participating, a full-time ECE instructor, and then Katie and I. And so that has been really rich conversations because it's cross-discipline, different areas of campus, different levels of experience, actually a pretty diverse group of participants as well, which has made the conversation really rich. And that has been really valuable. I think for me, at least, this version has actually been more fun, and pushed me harder than even working within my own department did. And so again, I think there's value in thinking about both versions, right? A very department specific one that can really help make progress on these areas with kind of an in-group, but then also these kind of, varied groups, heterogeneous group conversations can also be really valuable. And we're seeing the results of those conversations spread out more too, I think, because of that. And again, we wanted to leave space for growth. So we do these as 12 or 13 week communities of practice with 4 units. And that allows people to kind of get into the conversations and then come back recursively at the end and do some reflective practice with it. And I think, again, we're always pushing people towards taking action. So we do have them, like Equity 101, they have to do a praxis project at the end, something that they're going to bring to campus, something that they're going to change in their curriculum. So again, making people own it in that way. Cool. Katie, did I skip anything? Anything I should have gone into more detail about that you can think of?
I don't think so.
All right.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to give those of you who are participants here about 7 minutes to brainstorm some ideas. So if you are going to create the ideal Equity One for your campus, where it's at right now, who would it be for? What are the key concepts that you think would need to be presented to that group or given time to explore? What are your core values for this particular community going to be? So what do you want to kind of design into it from the beginning? And then again, what key elements might you need to have in place? Now, again, this is, get as much down because you're going to have a chance to then chat with a small group to kind of brainstorm and share ideas and see what's going on your campus around this. And then we'll talk out as a whole group and we can answer more specific questions. So take about 7 minutes to just brainstorm individually. And if you have questions, please ask. Katie and I are happy to answer.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Do we have everybody? I think so. Beautiful. Okay, great. So we've got about 10 minutes or so to discuss, and Kiara and I are really curious to hear what you talked about, if you came up with any ideas, any questions or concerns that you were able to bring up, anything and everything. Does anybody want to get started?